works towards true formation.
Okay, do you want to open this time and then I'll respond?
Sure.
Alright, ready and begin.
Well, we are coming to you guys again. I wanted to share a little bit about our second workshop that we just went through not too long ago. And it's interesting because this one I think is one that is a little bit more challenging than maybe what appears to be, where you recognize maybe an issue, but how to get there is maybe a little bit more the challenge. And so workshop 2 focused on fostering an openness and a brokenness in our congregations. How would you describe maybe kind of the current condition of a lot of our churches maybe?
Okay, so this is kind of what we talked about too in the workshop, is that a lot of our churches, especially here in America, have this problem where they think that if you're open about issues in your life, or if you're open about sin or sin problems, then that is like a big no-no. You shouldn't do that. It's culturally taboo. It's just not something that's accepted in our churches. And so we have a very closed-off worship service. One of the things that Jody mentioned was, of all the Psalms, 2/3 of the Psalms are laments, so things to be sorrowful or angry at God with, and really kind of digging into Him a bit. Whereas when we go to church today, most of our songs are happy.
Right.
And there's people who are suffering in
Yeah.
their life.
Yeah.
And they don't want to sing praises. They want to ask God, why is this happening to me? And they want to lament.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the heart behind this idea of this openness and brokenness, because we have this closed and appear healthy mentality.
It's almost as if we communicate to our congregation that no matter what you're feeling right now, you should be leaving happy and really excited. Where, they use the kind of the illustration of someone that comes in who just lost their job. And the first thing that we normally do right after announcements on a Sunday morning is, all right, now everybody get up, and today's like a wonderful day. And the drummer kicks off and this beat's going, and the guy's sitting there like, no, I don't want to. I mean, I just lost my job. I don't know how I'm going to feed my family, and I don't know why God let this happen, or what's the goal behind this. And there's not an opportunity for them to reflect in service.
And Jody quoted James Wilhoit. He wrote a book, Spiritual Formations as If the Church Mattered. And I underlined this, and I can see that Ricky did as well. And it says, a culture of pretending and simply trying to look good works against true formation. Okay, so, and when we put up that facade, we're pretending that we're growing.
Right.
But it's not actually happening.
Right.
And so Ricky is a youth minister, and we're going to get a little practical here. I think we might need to kind of go off script a little bit.
Yeah.
But Ricky's a youth minister, right? And he's certainly dealing with some issues in his youth group right now
Yeah, absolutely.
that we weren't prepared for in Bible college.
No,
right?
no way.
And I'm doing something completely different. I'm starting a new ministry at a church, trying to get things going, building a team. And so we're just in two very different worlds. And how we bring or how we change that openness, brokenness, or how we get to that openness and brokenness mentality is very different roads, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it's a different journey that we'll be taking, but I think a lot of the same foundations along the way. One of the things, it's not going to happen overnight. It's one of the things we talked about. As much as we wish we can come back, and maybe you guys can, after watching some of this, you might have that feeling like, oh, we need to change things. We need to do that. But the reality is we're dealing with a lot of people in our congregations, and a lot of people that might have been set in their ways for some time. And it takes a while to break down those walls to reformulate the culture that we're in, that we've been a part of and helped create, even, unfortunately.
And that really kind of goes into what Jody was talking about when he presents these lessons that we need to unlearn. Right? Yeah. And you were hitting right on this, so I'm going to go ahead and say it.
Okay.
But lesson 1 that we need to unlearn is that innovation results from major shifts in thinking.
Right.
Let me say that again. Innovation results from major shifts in thinking. And sometimes, especially with us younger ministers, right?
Yeah.
We come in and we want to change things because we have this prophet-like mentality, which
we think we do.
is God-given to us for sure.
Right, yeah, naturally.
And so we want to change things because we feel like this will make it better.
Yeah.
But something that Jody is challenging us with, and something that I've had to be challenged by my own circumstance, is that it's the baby steps. It's the slow drip of the faucet that makes that change. And we even posted an article on this on our website or on our Facebook page just a couple weeks ago. But it's not the major shifts in thinking; it's the little ones that will eventually get us there. And then Will Hoyt goes on to explain 3 perspectives needed to create a culture of brokenness and openness.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you a little bit. I didn't bring this up in group discussion, but I'm going to bring it up here in video because, well, this is my platform.
All right, yeah.
So the first one was a deep sense of our own sin, personal and corporate.
Yeah.
Now, that in and of itself is certainly okay.
Yeah.
But my problem with the way where the discussion went was this identity as sinners.
Okay.
Now, I might be biblically off base, and I'm certainly going to go look to make sure.
Right.
But what kept going through my mind throughout all of that discussion is because there was several older gentlemen who shared, and I certainly don't want to argue against them.
Don't isolate them.
But theologically
Right.
speaking, aren't we no longer identified as sinners? Because in Romans 7, towards the last half of the chapter, he's going to give the do passage. I do not do what I want to do, and I do the things that I don't want to do, and it's all talking about the willpower to no longer sin, right? But at the end, it's like, so it's not me doing it; it's sin living inside of me. Mm-hmm. So Paul is almost dichotomizing the 2 natures. Like, there's now that I've been set free in Christ, it's not me doing it; it's the sin in me. So there's I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess.
Well, and I think that's some of the discussion that we kind of progressed into when we were discussing the sin aspect. Are we dealing with the sin that is in us, like the inner being portion, or are we talking about a list of actions that we've done that are going against God? And I think that's a little bit of kind of that component that we're discussing that fueled that direction we're going. So, yeah.
And what were the other 2 points?
Yeah, number 2, as far as the perspective needed to create a culture of brokenness and openness, is an awareness of the reality of our yearning.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have this awareness of this reality that we need to be yearning, and I think this one sometimes can be challenging, and this might have a little bit of that tie to the overarching theme of this next few days of this thirst and hunger towards Christ. But it's creating that, and I think sometimes when we come into church, we're always wanting to be fed. We want more of a pick-me-up, I think. We're not wanting to go through and have bandages ripped off of us, and we're trying to hide a lot of who we are. And we don't have the desire of yearning to open ourselves up to the healing components, what something we talked about, in order for us to progress through it and to grow, to grow from these things that we're battling with.
So, and that led us into this discussion of, why Jesus came, right? So yes, he came to deal with our sin problem. He came to die for our sins.
Right, absolutely.
Right. But there was also this, mentality that came out in our discussion that salvation is not just about what happens in the afterlife. It's not all about eternity. It's also about the here and now.
Right.
Right. So when we deal with our sin problem, which is this inner desire to do sin, regardless of whether or not that's our identity or not, I'm sure we can discuss later.
You're right.
But salvation is not only justification.
Right.
It is also healing and restoration. Mm-hmm. And if we want to use maybe some biblical terms, which those are, but more theological terms, justification comes first, right? And that's what Christ did on the cross.
Right.
And then there's sanctification, and that's sort of the rest of our journey here on earth. And then we end up with glorification when our bodies will be, brought forth from the graves, and we get new bodies, and it's that eternal glory, that final mentality.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought that was interesting because he did even challenge us a little bit to say that that we've kind of cut off the salvation message that we've communicated, and even from the pulpit or somebody that's coming forward to be baptized, we're baptizing people. People are coming to know who Christ is, and then we send them on their merry way, and we don't develop and discuss and share how there's still going to be brokenness throughout your life, and how that's a continuation of this process of coming to Christ and others, and sharing the brokenness, and then experiencing that amazing healing and shaping and molding that Christ does in our lives. And it really hit home for me, especially with some of the students that are going through a lot of challenging things, and why students are kind of even leaving the faith. They're adults too.
Yeah.
I think they're losing that healing, that missing that healing component, and expecting us to remain full, which is one of the things that we talked about as well.
And that all comes down to this one statement that Joni made,
Yep.
that I think is really the root of the discipleship problem in the American church, which is the whole reason why we have merediscipleship.com.
Right.
And it's this, is that we've mistaken conversion as the end, and somehow forgotten the journey of faith, the discovery of the mystery of faith.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
as
powerful.
ministers, as church leaders, when we make conversion the goal,
Mhm.
we are selling out, I think, the
Mhm.
gospel. We're
Yeah.
cutting it short. We're making this conversion almost like a checklist, and then we're done. Now they're part of the church. But really, that journey of being healed and renewed has just begun.
Right.
So we need to be teaching that and preaching that in our churches, and I think that will in turn open up the culture of our church to be more open about our brokenness,
Mhm.
and together we can heal each other.
And I think part of that teaching component, though, is going to come from vulnerability from us as leaders. And I think one of the other things we hit the nail on the head in our discussions was the current culture, where it's not as accepted of the sharing of the brokenness.
Yeah.
When, especially as church leaders, where we come and share some struggles that we're going with, because they attribute that to weakness and all that, it's kind of frowned upon, and kind of that aspect of judgment that we've got setting in our churches, and that's not easy. When we tell people you're supposed to come to Christ, and no matter what you've done in your past, you'll be forgiven of those things, and you'll be able to have a new life, but then we don't address the component of, in that new life, you're still going to make mistakes, you're still going to be broken at times, but yet God is continuously there for that healing component that happens in us. But we feel like once we're accept Christ, that we're supposed to be full, and that we're messed up in some ways for struggling.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I think we're out of time. So thank you again for watching our video.
thank you.
We have, I think, 2 more videos
Yep.
coming after this, so be sure and catch those on our website at merediscipleship.com. Thanks.
See you.
Bye.